Welcome back to Derry Public Radio, a bi-weekly Stephen King book club podcast. It's just me, Joshua Kahn, solo, so you know what that means. It's interview time. That's right, today's guest is an award-winning filmmaker from South Carolina, renowned for his storytelling. His short films are featured on Shorts TV, Amazon Prime, and YouTube. A published author and Coastal Carolina University graduate, he holds a BA in music performance and an MA in teaching. I had the privilege of meeting him in person back at the last Dollar Baby Film Festival, which screened his Dollar Baby adaptation of That Feeling You Can Only Say What It Is in French. Please welcome to the show, Paul Inman. Paul, welcome to Derry Public Radio.
Hey, thanks for having me. Now I have to live up to all of that, right?
The bar of hype is set. Before we even get into it, I got to tell you, I think I told you when you were here in Davenport for the festival, but your adaptation was one of my absolute favorites from that whole festival.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
I appreciate that.
So tell me, what was your introduction to Stephen King's work?
Great question. So my dad, maybe my parents, one of them,
Yeah.
bought me a paperback version of Nightmares and Dreamscapes when I was like 12 or 13, probably 13.
Yeah.
And I remember specifically from that book, the story, The Moving Finger. Did you ever read The Moving Finger yet?
No, I haven't read Nightmares and Dreamscapes yet.
Yeah. It's a weird story. I specifically remember everything. So if you don't know, not everything, but I have I have a great memory of this story, and it's really goofy kind of stuff that you'd like when you're 13-year-old boy, I guess. It's a finger coming up out of the drain in the bathroom in this guy's apartment, and it just up and out, and it's like got a bunch of knuckles. It's really strange. But that one stuck with me. But my first full-length novel was Insomnia, and I got that when I was 14. And when you're reading Insomnia, when you're reading Insomnia as a 14-year-old, you're going, wow, this book is so weird and boring and about old people, So,
I mean,
I've read it since then, of course, and it's a fantastic book. I love it. One of my favorites, as a matter of fact.
That's how did it age for you, I guess?
Well, what's really interesting, I just listened to the audiobook version for the first time in probably more than a decade. I'd listened to it, maybe a decade ago or so. And I was like, okay, I really understand what this book is now. When I listened to it a decade ago, after reading it when I was 14, right? And so just recently reading it again, I was really like, okay, I'm picking up a lot more, because in that span of time, I'd actually done the whole Dark Tower, which was the first time and the only time. As a matter of fact. So I was really like, okay, this is pretty awesome, So made a lot more sense than when I was 14,
Do you have any Stephen King moment from any of his books, movies, any media that just lives rent free in your head when you think Stephen King?
I mean, yeah, like this is my era of life, he was writing and movies were coming out. So I got several, so one when I was young, I was a kid, like, how used to, I don't know if you remember this, but for those of you who are around my age listening or watching or whatever, you used to get like these free weekends of like HBO, like previews, like, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I caught the movie Maximum Overdrive when I was probably, I don't know, under 10. And I was like, what is going on with this bonkers film? I absolutely love this. And that's something that really stands out to me. Another thing that stands out to me is the story N. There was a great graphic comic on YouTube. Almost, maybe I watched it maybe a decade ago, maybe not quite a decade ago, but I loved the way that they adapted that into that graphic comic style. And that is a fantastic story. And if I was ever to adapt another one, if it was just like free reign, that's what I would take. I would absolutely hands down be like, this is the one I want to do. I want to do N. It's fantastic.
I think N is the like there's stone pillars involved.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Yep. I read the graphic novel. I thought it was so rad. I've not read the story though.
Yeah, I don't even. Well, yes, I have. I guess I have. But I was going to say I don't remember reading the story, but I do remember it. But I feel like the graphic comic on YouTube where they make the comic kind of move a little bit and stuff. That was just so awesome. I was like, that's cool. Like I would adapt not just the story, but I would also adapt the kind of the comic book version, the graphic novel version. Like I would mix them together, because it was just so awesome.
That would be
What
fun as
else?
hell.
Um, Wolf from The Talisman. That's something that stands out, stuck with me. That
Oh,
character is
right
so
here and
awesome.
now.
Right here and now, it's so good.
Man.
Like pulls on the heartstrings, man. And I already mentioned Dark Tower, of course. Like, and I've only done it, like I said, one time. The trip one time. I'm ready to do it again. Actually, it's been a while.
Yeah.
So
I'm as we're reading it, I'm not gonna read it again until we read it on the podcast. So it's gonna be
that's
my
cool.
second time through until we have it all done on the show. So it
That's
could be
awesome.
forever.
Yeah, it could be. I've been following along with you guys. So
Oh, well, thank you.
yeah, for
So
sure.
is it the free weekends of HBO inspired your love of filmmaking?
I mean, yeah, I'm sure you could trace it to that, you know. Yeah, I always liked just creating things, right? And
Yeah.
when I was a middle schooler, I used to like to watch, the NBA a lot, because
Hmm.
Jordan was in it then,
Yeah.
and it was just really interesting. But one thing that I really liked is the guys who sat on the sidelines and they like had cameras, and I was like, I want to be a cameraman someday. So that kind of, as I got a little bit older, I purchased like one of those big giant VHS recorders that you threw on your shoulder, right?
Hell yeah.
And my
Full
friends and I in
VHS
college,
tape in
yeah,
it.
exactly. My friends and I in college, we made a few really, really, really terrible movies. We like parodied the Blair Witch Project. It was it was awesome actually, but it's
Yeah.
terrible to watch, you know. So look for that pretty soon. No, I'm just kidding. Uh, the internet really kind of just opened things up for me when things like YouTube, for example, when it first started, right? But even before that, like you could go on blogs and you could read about like how to be a filmmaker and stuff, and people were just, they wanted to teach you how to do it, and I just took that in and I was like, this is what I want to try to do. And I'm self-taught everything. Well, I guess not self-taught, somebody else taught me, but I didn't go to school for it or anything,
Yeah.
so
You are not just a filmmaker by any means. You are a multimedia artist. What sort of media do you like to create in?
I really enjoy writing. So when
Yeah.
it came down to it and I learned about filmmaking, I started writing my own scripts, and I kind of found that I like that. I like to be able to do that because you can kind of just make up anything you want and put it down on paper. And that sort of also expanded into writing in longer forms. So I have a novel that I've written and it's out there in the world. It's called Ageless. You don't have to buy it, but it could
Well,
feed
we're
my
going
family. No, I'm just kidding.
the link
I
will be
haven't
in the
sold
show
that much.
notes. So people
Thanks.
scoop it up.
I just found that creating things, no matter what, like I'm a terrible actual artist. Like I can't draw or paint, but I still try to do it because I'm just like, I want to see what this is like, you
Yeah.
know?
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, I don't know. I just like to try a little bit of everything and see what sticks, you know? Jack of all trades, master of none, really, you know?
It's crazy because the I said at the top you adapted that feeling, and that is it's such a detail rich story. We're going to get into all that, but for anybody who has not read that feeling, can you summarize it for us?
Sure. I actually you have to make a DVD to send to Stephen King, right? So I actually have a DVD right here, and I'm gonna
Ah,
just read the back of it for you. So like,
I love
here's the back. I'm just gonna
no
read the
one
back.
else has thought to cheat this way.
Well, hey, I'm glad I'm being inventive, I guess. Who knows? But it says a woman on her belated honeymoon deals with the transgressions of her past and ultimately the consequences of her choices as she struggles with deja vu at 16,000 feet. So that's just a really, really broad summary of it.
It's a it is definitely a solid spoiler free version of the story.
It really is. Yeah.
Man, why choose that feeling? It is so complicated.
Um, you know, well, first of all, let me just take a second and say that when you guys broke it down on the show, it was awesome. It was fantastic.
Yeah?
It was a great episode. Yeah, I
Thank
listened to
you.
it
Thank you
and
so much.
I was like, okay. And you guys were thinking of things that I never thought of. And of course, I read the story many, many times over the
Yeah.
course of getting it ready to film, and I just want to say, hey, bravo, that was fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. So I chose this one comes down to two factors if I just want to simplify this, right? So the first reason that I chose it is because I actually really kind of enjoy nonlinear stories, and when you read this, if you haven't read it yet, it's kind of told in a nonlinear narrative, right? So I'm not sure why I'm drawn to that, but things like Memento or like Lost or even like Pulp Fiction, and there's many other ones. Like Chris Nolan likes to do a lot of
Yeah.
nonlinear stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So,
love it.
but that kind of storytelling just is something that I gravitate toward. Reason number two is there weren't a ton of adaptations of this particular story, probably because you have to either work around this airplane thing because they're in a plane, or you
Yeah.
have to get a plane. You know what I mean? So I thought, well, maybe I'll give this a try. And my buddy Ben came up with a saying when we were going through trying to decide which of these that I would go for. And he said, "Well, if there's a plane, there's a plan." So I thought that was a great saying, and I
Oh my
still want to get
god,
that put on a shirt.
Ben.
So
Ben, if I remember correctly, has a cameo in the film.
yes, he does. Yes, he does.
Yeah.
Everybody says that that's the Stephen King moment,
It
because
really, yeah, it kind of is.
and he's a really great sounding board
Mhm.
for my ideas. He's a media specialist, a librarian, in the day job, and he's got an English degree and stuff. And so I was like, hey, there's nobody better to bounce these ideas off of than someone who can give me some really feedback, literary feedback. Those are the two big reasons that I chose it.
What was the Dollar Baby process like for you when you went to finally pulled the trigger on it?
Well, here's the thing, right? So the dollar babies, the history of the dollar babies, a little bit, it wasn't something that was widely known for a long time. And maybe in the early 2000s, it started getting out there more. And I actually can't remember exactly where I first heard about it. I read about it on some website, I'm sure. And I was like, I'd love to do that. But I also realized that my limitations as a filmmaker were very, very great at that point because I didn't know what I was doing. So
Sure.
I was like, I want to do that, but not today. So I mean, there really wasn't a lot of hurdles when it comes to it. It was really smooth. I submitted my proposal of like what I wanted to adapt that feeling and why I wanted to do it, and just like a skeleton outline of how that I might do it. And it wasn't all that long before I got a contract back, maybe a couple weeks. So that part of the process was really pretty simple. But I was, it was nail biter for those couple weeks. I was like,
Oh,
they're
I
going to tell me
bet.
no. They're going to tell me no, because I didn't expect to hear anything like within 24 hours. But after a week or so, I was like, okay, that's it. It's not happening.
Yeah,
So
you have the "it's any day now."
yeah,
The answer's
exactly.
coming any day.
For sure. Absolutely.
So as I said before, the story is so detail rich. It sounds so simple. The synopsis you gave from the back of the DVD makes it sound like a very simple story. But I feel like every time you read it, you discover something else. It's so layered. How did you approach something so detail heavy?
As I already mentioned, I kind of bounced things off of Ben Higgins, who is, he was in the cameo, and he really helped sort of shape this what we were going to use basically
Mhm.
early on. And he was a great sounding board. It was relatively, I mean, as straightforward as you can with this kind of story. These deep, nuanced layers, we wanted to show that in the film, and my hope is that when people see it on that second and third viewing, they're really pulling out new things from the story, which is, I guess, maybe a reason that I like those nonlinear tales, because after you see it once, you process it one way, and then when you see it again, you process it a different way because you're not waiting on these surprises to happen. You know what's coming, and you're looking
Yeah.
for different kinds of things, which is what happened when I was reading the story over and over and over. I would pull out these different little things, and when you're adapting stuff like that, there's a lot there, and we kept a lot from that original story. Of course, there are some things that just didn't translate very well, like there's a lot of monologuing from the main character.
Mhm.
You know, there's a lot of stuff, internal monologuing, I should say, a lot of stuff in her head that's happening in the story, and that just doesn't always work well on screen. You know what I mean?
Let's talk about some of the changes that you did make.
Just right off the bat, like we couldn't use that internal monologue, so I had to come up with a way that we could still show that these thoughts in her brain, right? So I did that by basically creating another character, and that character became like a live action version of her inner monologue, basically. So she could interact with herself, and we could show the changing through the story, the character growth through the story, right? And as you mentioned, she has to play opposite of herself the whole time, and it was really, really an interesting challenge. And she just stepped up to the plate. I mean, she was amazing. Like we had. Meetings kind of like we're on now, and discussed like ad nauseum both of these characters, like what is happening right here in this one, word answer, like what's the thought process, like what's going on. And it was just really pretty wild. What else did we change? Oh, I know. We added, this is additions, so we added some scenes that were basically one line pulled out of the story. She said she went to the beach and she loses her locket on the beach, right? And so I was like, well, I live right beside the ocean, so I'm going to write a whole scene around this because I can film at the beach, right? So we expanded on that, and we kind of showed that happening, and we tried to give some more deeper symbolism to that locket and the receiving it from her grandmother, and losing it, and how it kind of affected her as an adolescent. So that was something that we added in just from that one line, that throwaway sentence or whatever it was. Some other small changes: we changed their age, because in the story they're like older and they're on their second honeymoon. So they're, I would imagine, it may say in the story, I haven't read it in a long time, and they start to blur together,
Yeah,
So
for
the
sure.
film and the story start to blur together. But I think that the original story, they were maybe in their late 50s or something like
Yeah, I
that.
want to say
Um,
is 50s.
yeah, so I brought them down to, like, I mean, we don't really give them a specific age, but late 20s, maybe early 30s, and made it be just their first honeymoon, where these events are sort of taking place, right? So I also changed their names just to make them a little more modern, because they're like
Yeah.
25, 30 years old. Not that there's anything wrong with those names. I think it's Carol and Bill. I changed it to Caroline and Will.
Yeah.
Close enough, right? So,
I will say what I really loved about the addition of that beach scene is that the realization of it being lost is like just before a kiss, and so it
yep,
also adds that chaste Catholic guilt in there.
yep.
It adds a layer of that onto her, and you do a great job of sowing the seeds of her repression through all the flashbacks.
Yeah, thanks. That's a big theme, obviously, the
Mhm.
Catholic guilt. And I myself am not Catholic, so I actually talked to a couple of people who were, and I was like, just walk me through this. Like, tell me about what this is like for you, or what is even the stereotypical version of it like, just so I can sort of understand where this character might be coming from.
Did those Catholic friends see the final version and say if you nailed it or not?
Yes, actually, they did, and they were like,
Perfect.
"This is fantastic." They're like, I can totally see that through this whole thing, the theme is that Catholic guilt." And I was like,
Yeah.
"Great, that means I at least pulled a little bit of something off."
You nailed it. You absolutely nailed it, I
Thanks,
assure
thank you
you.
so much.
So
Thanks.
can you take us through some of the challenges in making the film itself? Namely, we hinted the airplane set. How'd you pull
Ah,
it
the
off?
airplane. The airplane. So planes are hard to get. I don't know if you know that, right? Um, And, where there's a plane, there's a plan. So, uh, actually, it wasn't as hard getting the plane itself as I thought it was going to be. The guy who was the pilot of the plane, his name is Patrick Herman. He actually knew someone who owned this plane, and it was getting refurbished. So it was grounded for a while, right? And getting permission to use the plane wasn't super difficult. The harder part was being able to go onto the ramp and use the plane, because security protocol and everything, you have to have badges, and you have to go through trainings to be able to work on that side of the fence, at the airports and stuff, right? So you don't necessarily store a plane like at the storage center down the road. You know what I mean? You got to store it at the airport and on that side of the security, right? So getting in there was really difficult. That was the hard part. In fact, we just a few days before shooting was supposed to commence, there was real talk that like we weren't going to be able to get in to that side of onto the ramp. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, we've got to have a backup plan. So I immediately was like, all right, can we get a train? And I was like, no, train's going to be hard too. There's no way that's going to happen. There's a company around here that is, they are refurbishing some of that. We have train tracks. They're refurbishing. So I was like, potentially maybe, but that's out left field too. But the idea we landed on, and I'm glad it worked out with the plane, but the idea that we landed on was maybe we get a limousine, because it's the same general idea. You have somebody else driving, and they're just riding. So that was the plan B. And renting a limousine for a day, was going to eat into our little bit of budget, but it was like, hey, whatever, we can do it, or 2 days or whatever we needed, right?
Yeah.
But last minute, someone who works for a company that works on that side of it's kind of convoluted. So I'm going to give you the easy version. He basically got permission to bring us on as long as he babysat us. So he had to sit with us. He was a trooper. He had to sit with us for like 10 hours.
Oh my God.
And I was like, look, I'm going to feed you. I'm going to take care of you. You don't have to do anything. You sit under the tarp here and you just babysit, but it worked out in the end. And, you can't really hope for anything else, right? Oh, I know another challenge. So we were filming all this stuff in the car because the car's driving all over Southern Florida in the story, right? And it was the day before. It was actually the plane day. The next morning, we were going to take the car. We had the big, I forget what it's called, the skiff or whatever you put it on so you can pull it so they don't have to actually drive. But we didn't have the rigging for the camera. So we had to pivot at the last moment. And I mean, literal last moment. We were like 10 hours away from filming. And it was like, what are we going to do? We don't have the rigging for the car to put the camera on, but we got everything else. And a BMW dealer in this area, donated the use of a BMW for all this driving scenes, right? Luckily, though, our director of photography, John, he had 90 feet of green screen. He's like, we'll just set up green screen and we'll do it, which actually was better for us because then, have all the road noise and all the stuff like that. So our dialogue was a lot cleaner. So, I mean, it worked out for us, and hopefully it doesn't look too much like green screen.
And I'm sure it definitely helped with the eye explosion.
Oh yeah, definitely. That part, that was fun to make that, so.
Yeah. Can you tell us any other stories from set? I specifically, not from set, but I would love to hear about the eyeball popping.
Okay. All right. So when we shot this, it was the end of 2020. It was like right after Christmas and through New Year's. Okay. So it was winter time, right? And I live, just outside of Myrtle Beach in South Carolina. And it doesn't get all that cold here too often, but it did that day. And I'm getting to the eyeball part of the story, but I'm going to give you a side story here because ADHD or something, I guess.
Take me on a ride.
So it was really cold when we shot that beach scene. I mean, it was the coldest day that had been for probably 2 weeks. And we had these young adults out there in their like swimsuits. And it was probably, I mean, it's real cold for here being in the 30s, right?
Yeah.
So it was really cold. And on the ocean, it's super windy, right?
Oh, yeah.
So these kids were freezing and we're doing take after take. We're out there for hours. And I was like, you guys are troopers. And I still actually owe them ice cream. I said, I'll get you ice cream when it's not freezing, So, but all of that is to say that it was COVID time, right? It was like when COVID was really, big and everybody was trying to be real safe about it, right? Including us, we did all the protocols on set that were recommended through, the pros, but we had a makeup artist. He is the makeup artist for The Walking Dead. And he was a makeup artist on Halloween, the ones that were shot recently, the Halloween movies. And
Cool.
we had worked with him on another short film before, and he was all in, and he had a COVID scare and had to back out. So that
Oh
ended a lot of that
no.
ended up being digital makeup that I had to do myself. I had to learn how to do and add in post. We had some
You're an
makeup, so it was like
insane
a mix.
person.
Yes, I am. And it took a long ass time, man. It took a long time to learn how to do that and make it look good. I've got like, no joke, I've got probably versions where I'm like, look, this is a step on the process. I would send it to our composer, Gary Thomas, because, we were working a lot together during that time because, he was writing the music. I was working on the visual effects. And I would send in the stuff. I'm like, how does this one look? He's like, and I'm like, look, I'm learning. All right. I got to have baby steps here. So the eyeball pop and a lot of that stuff is just digital makeup. I was real sad to lose him though, because um, having that real, that real look on the film, I just love that. But you pivot. That's what this is about.
Yeah.
Making movies is about solving problems. And that's
Seriously. And
one.
what a hard pivot.
Yeah, and one of my favorite things is solving the problems. So here's something that I haven't really talked about too much. We shot miniatures for some of the plane stuff,
Yeah.
and some of it looked good, and some of it's still in the movie, and others weren't. And I had to pivot again and learn how to do something else in the digital effects world, the visual effects world. So that was kind of cool. I liked that aspect. I would have liked to have kept the miniatures, but you know they got to look semi-real, you know what I mean?
I'm telling you, discovering that this was all your first go at all the CGI makes it doubly impressive because
Well,
it looks
for
great.
hey, thanks. For a lot of it, it was definitely my first go. I mean, I
Yeah.
can do, I've been doing green screen stuff for a while, but nothing like to that level. You do a couple of shots of green screen, not like half the film, you know what I mean?
Right.
So it was definitely an undertaking, and I had a list of all of the visual effects shots, and there were something like 300 or
Oh
something
my
crazy.
god.
And I'm like, Titanic didn't even have 300 shots or something like that. Maybe it was 200. I don't know. It was just a lot. It was crazy. Um, another pretty funny story, and this is kind of relevant to what I'm doing actually right now. There was a little girl that was in the red dress, right, with playing
Mhm.
with the doll, right. So it was the first time she had ever done anything on camera like that, right, and she was very, very nervous. And we just had a little cute moment where I just sat on the ground with her and I played with the doll, and we just talked. And I was like,
Oh,
tell me about you and whatever. And she's a really sweet kid, and I'm actually teaching a filmmaking summer camp, and she signed up for it. So I
that's
hadn't seen her in a couple of
awesome.
years. Yeah, I hadn't seen her in a couple of years. Her name's Maddie. She was
That's
fantastic.
cool. You had an impact. That's
Yeah, it
so
was. That was
awesome.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
Um, One more funny story that I like to tell is we um, we had a stand-in because Kate had to act against someone, so she had sort of a body double stand-in
Mhm.
that would sort of give us the illusion when they were both on screen that she was in both places, but also that she could bounce her lines off of, and then they'd switch places, and she'd say the opposite character's lines, and she'd get that acting feedback that she needed, right?
Mhm.
So one we decided to give that lady's name, by the way, is Gary, and we decided to give Gary a small part, and she's the in the movie she's the rental agent. So
Yeah?
she's the lady who comes out and does the rental agreement stuff, right, for the car that they're renting.
That's
So
fantastic.
when we were shooting all that, she's such a trooper too, by the way. She was awesome. She was like, I'll do whatever. And I was like, because there's like a shot of her chest, and I was like, look, we don't have to do this. And she's like, no, no, no. She said, I just feel bad. I'm not like more. And I was like, no, no, no. I was like,
Oh
no,
my
don't worry.
god.
I know, dude. I was like, all right, look, if we don't shoot this, I'm just going to be too embarrassed to do it. So let's just roll, whatever. But no, she was a trooper. Uh, I know it's like, well, I'm
That's
sorry, Gary. If
hilarious.
you're listening to this, I'm sorry that I'm giving all that away. But so we wanted to have her on screen because she was with us every day to shoot. So I was like, yeah, let's get you in this role, right?
That's awesome.
When we were doing it, though, we were doing like a master of everybody, right? A master shot, which is shows where everybody is in proximity to everybody else, right? So
Mhm.
we discovered that we need the double in this shot too. So how are we going to do that? And I was, I loved the problem solving part. I'm just looking around at everybody, and I look over at our boom operator. His name is Jesse. And I say, "Hey, Jesse, how tall are you?" And he's like, why? And I was like, because I think you're the right height. And I was like, let me ask you. And of course, you can say no, because we can pivot and do something different. Would you be willing to put on this wig and costume? And I was like, you don't have to face the camera. You just have your back to the camera. And he was like, yeah, he was a good sport about it, man. He
I
really
love
was.
it.
And
Oh,
I think it was probably hilarious for everyone except for Jesse. And I'm sorry, Jesse. But you were a great sport,
that's
Jesse. I
so
appreciate that.
good.
And so when you see this master shot, that's actually Jesse's
I'm gonna
back
look.
to the camera. Yeah.
That's so
I'm giving away
great.
all the secrets here. Like,
Yeah,
well,
that's what I want in my interviews. Give me all the details. The thing that I love about interviewing dollar baby directors like yourself is that these are all passion projects. Like
yeah,
no one's walking away with a profit from
yeah. No,
doing these.
no
Like
one's
it's
walking away with profit.
exactly you're putting your passion like where your mouth is. It's so
Yeah,
cool.
it is
So
cool, man. Independent film is just amazing.
what is it that you wanted the audience to take away when they walked out of a screening?
That's a tough
Because
one.
man, there's a lot of feelings in this.
There are that feeling. There's a lot of feelings.
Oh yeah.
Uh, well, mostly the response from people has been pretty positive, right?
Yeah.
Um, uh, we've had we've put it in. I've put it in a good bit of festivals, and we've gotten a pretty decent response on that too. But I just have to say, if you're making any film for film festivals, you either want to go full on and make a feature, or you need to make that sucker under 20 minutes. Because at 30 minutes, there's a lot of film festivals who are like, "Hey, we like this. We can't program it because
Oh.
we need to show. We've got a certain um, block that we got to fill, and it's hard for us to program 30 minutes. It's easier to program 15 or maybe 20. So that's just a pro tip for those of you at home. The feeling that I wanted people to walk away with. I want people to sort of empathize with this woman and her trials and tribulations. I think that's probably my big hope that people take away from this. Because there's a relatively controversial thing that happens in this film with this character, and I didn't want to shy away from that. So I tried to adapt it the best I could that it was in the story. I had to change it obviously because of the internal monologuing that it does in the written in Stephen King's written version. But
Mm.
she basically has an abortion or at some point in their relationship, and I want people to see that, or I'm hoping that people to see that and her other situations in life that's not lightly. Those decisions don't come lightly, and they have consequences in terms of how people feel. So I was looking. Hopefully, I was hoping that people had some empathy. So that was kind of my uh, big takeaway. Also, I hope people sort of figured it out right before the reveal, because I love
Yeah.
that. Like as a watcher of films, I love to be like, oh, I just figured it out, and then they show me, and I'm like, yes, I got it right. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah, it's
so
super satisfying. So now that the Dollar Baby program has ended, what are your thoughts on the impact of the program as a whole?
it's a fantastic question. As I mentioned just a few minutes ago, like independent filmmaking is so awesome and so cool, and I think that um, the opportunity to just be able to work on a story that was created by such a prolific writer and such a sort of an icon in right now. I mean, for the last several decades, right?
Yeah.
I think that that's definitely truly an honor. Like beyond that, I think that it's really cool that people over the last 4 decades have had a chance to make these films, and it's impacted not just hundreds of people but thousands of people across the globe. They get to put their little stamp on the Stephen King universe, and I think that's really amazing. I'm sad, bummed that it's gone, but I'm also happy that I got to be some small part of it.
Yeah, you're now part of a very elite club.
That's weird to say. I don't know how to respond to that.
Well, respond by telling me and our listeners what's next for you.
Actually got a kind of a lot going on, so bear with me here,
Hit
folks.
me.
So I have a novella coming out in an anthology in October. The anthology is called Macabre, and a horror anthology, and my story and it's called Welcome to Hell. It's sort of like Lovecraft meets Men in Black meets Clerks, maybe.
Oh my gosh.
Um, it's a sci-fi cosmic horror tale about this group of people who go through a rip in space time and they end up on another planet. So
That rules.
yeah, I hope it's going to be good. So far, the feedback has been pretty good to the beta readers that I've sent it out to. So I'm cleaning it up right now, and actually, my deadline is on Thursday. So
Oh.
I don't think I'm going to make it. I already sent out an email and said, "Hey, I need a few more days. Can I have through the weekend?" And it was like, "Yeah, you're all right." And I was like, "Oh my god." I've written another full length novel called 1989 After Humanity. It's in edits right now. I'm in the early stages of working with the film department at the local college, Coastal Carolina University, where I went to college, and we're in talks to produce another short film, a post-apocalyptic drama about two brothers that. Well, I'll just leave it at that.
Awesome.
Just in case you can never watch it,
Yeah.
So I have adapted two stories into screenplays from another horror novelist, another New York Times bestselling author named Scott Sigler. He's given me the thumbs up to make them into short films or even feature-length films if I feel so inclined. So
Wow.
Takes money to do that, though. You know what I mean?
It sure does.
So
yeah.
reach out to me if you want to support
Backers?
that. You know what I mean? Yeah, exactly. I'll also be at the first ever King Con
Yeah.
in October, where we'll be doing a screening of That Feeling along with many other dollar babies, and perhaps there'll be some Q&A stuff. So if you want to come out and watch, get a ticket to King Con and talk to me. And there's a lot of other dollar babies directors that are be coming out as well. So and that is in October 25th, 6th, 24th, 5th, 6th, something like that.
Yes, 24th, 5th, and 6th, I believe. I've interviewed them on the show. I'm a professional. Also, because we are talking about them, listeners, if you've been on the fence, I know there's less than 200 tickets left.
Oh, wow.
All said and done. It's close to selling out. It's going to be a huge
event. It is really close.
Yeah. So tell us where we can follow you and your career. Where can we pick up these books? Give me all the links.
if you just search on Amazon for Ageless by Paul Inman, you'll find it. You can get the ebook or the actual physical book. You can follow me pretty much everywhere at Paul Inman SC. So it's just my name, SC, where I live. Very, very creative, You can actually email me too at the same thing, paulinmansc@gmail.com. You can follow That Feeling, the film, That Feeling Film, on Instagram at That Feeling Film, and Facebook too. I think I think it's the same thing for Facebook at That Feeling Film. And yeah, I mean, that's where I'm at pretty much everywhere.
Paul, thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah, man, I absolutely 100% appreciate you and the others for giving me this opportunity because, I love listening to your show. I've been listening to you guys for years, honestly.
Oh, yeah?
Like a long time
you.
before. I was listening back before I even had the Dollar Baby.
That's wild. Yeah. I did not know that.
Yep. Long time.
Thank you for listening.
This is a surreal moment here.
Right? Yeah. Well, I'll let the others know that they really missed out.
I mean, I wouldn't put it that way, but if you do, I won't be mad at you.
That is it for this episode of Derry Public Radio. As always, thank you for listening. Please join us for our next episode. For Paul Inman, I'm Joshua Kahn saying thank you and good night.
That's all for now, listeners. Goodbye.